In 1980, the Austrian Ministry of Defense published a list of 17 requirements for a new standard-issue military sidearm. Their existing pistol, the Walther P38, was a pre-World War II design that the ministry considered obsolete. The testing protocol was designed to be punishing. The weapon had to function after being frozen, submerged, and buried in sand. It had to fire 15,000 rounds, and then survive an overpressure test using a cartridge with double the standard chamber pressure. These specifications were sent to every established firearms manufacturer in Europe. Companies like Beretta, Sig Sauer, and Heckler & Koch, names that had armed the armies of NATO for decades, responded to the call. These legacy companies submitted pistols that reflected their existing architectures. They were heavy, steel-framed weapons that functioned as evolutions of the designs they had been building for over a century. Every major bidder worked from the same premise. A military pistol had to be made of steel. Because they were locked into this traditional design philosophy, they solved engineering problems by adding more parts, increasing the complexity and weight of their submissions. While the industry giants were refining their steel models, a 52-year-old named Gaston Glock read the specifications and decided to build his own pistol in a garage outside Vienna. Glock's background was not in ballistics or gunsmithing. His company, Glock GmbH, manufactured synthetic field knives, curtain rods, and plastic window fittings for the military. He had not held a firearm since he was conscripted into the Wehrmacht as a teenager in the final weeks of the war. He had no institutional assumptions to inherit and no existing factory lines to modify. Glock started from zero. Because he lacked the specialized equipment to machine steel frames, he looked at the problem through the lens of polymer injection molding, a material most firearms engineers at the time considered appropriate only for toys. Glock began by purchasing the top competitors' pistols, disassembling them, and studying their points of failure. He then hired camera technicians and engineers from the polymer industry, asking what a combat pistol would look like if they ignored current manufacturing constraints. The result was a subtractive approach to engineering. Where a Beretta contained over 70 components, Glock stripped the mechanism to its essential functions, reducing the weapon to just 34 parts. This meant fewer components that could break, jam, or be lost in the dark. He replaced the traditional steel frame with a single piece of proprietary nylon-based polymer. The entire lower half of the gun weighed only 6 ounces and naturally flexed to absorb recoil energy. This subtractive logic extended to the user interface. Glock removed the external manual safety lever entirely, identifying it as a primary cause of operator error under the stress of a gunfight. To maintain safety, he designed a system of 3 internal blocks. They only disengage simultaneously when the trigger is fully depressed, and reset automatically the moment the trigger is released. In 1982, the ministry began its assessment. They baked it to 100 degrees, frozen it to -40, and caked it in mud. After 15,000 rounds of endurance testing, Glock's 90-day design was the only one that emerged without a single failure, outperforming every established firearms manufacturer in Europe. By the mid-1980s, the company turned its attention to the United States, where local police departments were struggling with a surge in drug-related urban violence. Patrol officers on nighttime streets were finding themselves at a dangerous disadvantage, entering confrontations where they were severely under-equipped against heavily armed cartels. While suspects were often carrying high-capacity semi-automatics, the standard police service weapon was still a 6-shot revolver. This left officers chronically outgunned during confrontations, with nearly triple the ammunition capacity being fired back at them. Glock utilized an economic Trojan horse. Offering departments brand new pistols at massive discounts, he took revolvers as trade-ins and resold them at a profit. Steel-framed manufacturers couldn't afford this. Their high manufacturing costs meant they couldn't trade inventory for used weapons and survive. The strategy reached its tipping point in New York. Despite initial bans due to plastic gun security concerns, the NYPD adopted the weapon after Commissioner Benjamin Ward was seen personally carrying one in 1988. Once the NYPD made the switch, an institutional cascade followed. By the end of the decade, the curtain rod manufacturer had armed nearly 75% of American law enforcement. The firearms industry soon faced a harsh reality. The companies that had dismissed the Glock as a plastic novelty now had to abandon their steel frame legacies to survive. Factories that had spent a century refining metal machining were forced to gut their floors and install polymer injection lines just to keep pace. While his competitors struggled with the transition, Gaston Glock kept his company private and debt-free, refusing outside investment or public listings. This independence protected the company, while legendary names like Colt and Remington were hollowed out by private equity and repeated bankruptcies. Even a 1999 assassination attempt by an embezzling advisor failed to stop the founder. Despite being struck multiple times with a mallet in an underground car park, the 70-year-old Glock fought back and punched the assassin unconscious. He managed his company with the same philosophy he used for his pistol: minimal complexity and maximum function. More than 20 million Glock pistols have been manufactured since 1982. The design has been updated through 6 generations, yet the fundamental architecture of the weapon has remained essentially identical for over 4 decades. The legacy manufacturers failed because they were experts. Their centuries of experience were exactly what prevented them from imagining a tool that didn't look like the ones they already knew how to build. Gaston Glock's success suggests that institutional experience can be a primary blind spot. By refusing to accept the premise of what a firearm had always been, an outsider with a blank slate achieved what tradition could not.